So you want to be a registered dietitian? You are in the right place. My name is Jenny Westerkamp, founder of All Access Dietetics, and your host for Dear Future Dietitian, a podcast dedicated to helping you feel more confident in every step of your journey towards that RD credential. Thank you for being here and taking the time to listen to this episode and investing in yourself and your future career. I can already tell you're going to be a rockstar dietitian. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today I have Jenny Lowe. She is a future dietitian and career changer coming to the dietetics field from a career in nuclear medicine. She was recently matched to the Wellness Workdays dietetic internship. She also has her own nutrition coaching business, and she was a client of our Get Matched coaching program, which is an admissions coaching program that supports students through the application process of getting into dietetic internships and graduate programs. She's with us from Virginia Beach. Jenny, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jenny, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on.
Yes, me too. I think that when we, first started this podcast, we knew we wanted to have interviews with future dietitians, and we really wanted to have interviews with career changers because we get hit up in our email inbox every week about people that are interested in getting into this field, even if they have different careers or different backgrounds in their education. And so I'm really excited to have you share your story and be able to show people that it is possible to go from something like nuclear medicine into dietetics and be that inspiration for people. So let's start with the first question, which is really just, sharing your background, telling me kind of that story about your journey so far in your career.
So I come from a long history of healthcare, I guess. I started in healthcare when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I started in emergency medicine. I was an EMT, and I worked pre-hospital and in a level 1 trauma center all through college. So I did that for about 7 or 8 years as a medic. And then, as you said, I transitioned into nuclear medicine. I did nuclear cardiology. I ran a non-invasive cardiovascular stress testing lab for 11 years with a private practice cardiology group. I absolutely loved it. And then, one day I realized that I don't know how to say this, but I felt like my patients were getting younger and younger. So I was seeing more and more heart disease in patients younger. When I first started, all my patients were 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then, when I started this trend, when I realized I wanted to kind of do something else, my patients were in their 40s. I had teenagers that were coming that had heart disease and had heart attacks, so I was seeing this trend where we were getting diagnosable heart disease earlier in our lives. And then I realized that I had kind of become a big fish in a small pond. And I mean that in my career, there was nowhere up for me to move. But additionally, I didn't, and more importantly, I felt like I couldn't make as much of an impact anymore. So I'd gone into this department, and I had done a lot of changes, and we created this amazing, primary referral center where we were getting international referrals, and we were, doing these really amazing techniques of procedures and imaging. And we really created this really special program. But then I realized that, there wasn't much more to do. We had created this really amazing program. We were doing everything that we could. And while I was still finding these heart disease, and I was still having these amazing relationships with these patients that I've known for years, I knew their families, I had these great interpersonal relationships. I didn't feel like I was making as big of an impact. And, at the end of the day, that's why I got into healthcare, is I wanted to help people. And kind of at the same time, I realized I wanted to do something else. And I went back to school, started getting my master's degree in exercise science because I got into endurance athletics at that time too. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to learn more. And one of my classes was Intro into Nutrition, and everything just clicked. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. Nuclear medicine, I am as much of a nerd as that sounds like. And I was like, oh my God, the science and the chemistry behind it. And I loved biochemistry. Nobody will ever tell you that again besides me, because biochemistry is a terrible class. And I loved it. And I was just like, this is it. Like, I took this class. It was a terrible class. Looking back at it now that I have my degree, I was like, that was a terrible class. But I was like, this is what it is. Like, this is what's going to allow me to help these heart patients prevent disease or reverse disease. It's going to help me get them off medication that they have to take, they were told they had to take for the rest of their lives. It's going to allow me to help these endurance athletes that I've, grown to love and become. It's going to help with me allowed to kind of grow as an individual in healthcare as well. It's going to allow me to get out from, corporate healthcare as well. And I realized kind of at that moment, that's what I want to do. So I finished up my master's degree in exercise science. I think when I had made that decision, I did all this searching. There was no master's program at the time that got me a DPD statement that was online because I wasn't going to move. I have a family in Virginia Beach and I wasn't planning on moving to go to school. So I wound up having to go back for another bachelor's, which is insane. I applied to University of Alabama on a Thursday. I think on like Monday, I got my acceptance letter. And then on like Friday, I turned in like my 4-week notice at work. And then like,
wow, it was
so
you just did it.
Did it. It was, because it was all these kind of like little things that kind of came together all at the right time. And sometimes you just know.
Right.
And it was just one of those things where it's like, you know what, this is absolutely the right path for me to be on. And I couldn't be happier with my choice. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to go from being director of this non-invasive lab, having a secure career, having, done nuclear medicine and like just a completely different, aspect of healthcare and having to take this giant leap of faith and doing this completely different career. Well, sort of completely different career. But I couldn't be happier with my choice.
Right. Yeah. And it is such a leap, but that's where all the benefit is, on the other side of that leap when you're willing to do that. And I know, like for me, I thought it was stressful even changing my major from science into nutrition as a junior. So to see how you changed your entire career is pretty crazy. But I do want to say that an intro to nutrition class also was my aha moment when I was in college and I realized, that this is something that can really tie in a lot of different things for me personally and my interests. And looks like it was the same for you. So, to anyone that hasn't taken an intro to nutrition and is thinking about it, just start there. And that could be all you need to make the leap. So,
and then when you look back like 3 years later and like all you learned in that class is what a carbohydrate was. And you're like,
right.
This has nothing to do.
Very basic, but you're
very basic. And you're like, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
This
I know.
is my career.
Like, this is just the beginning. Much more. Well, that's great. So then it was kind of a quick moment, but building up and you didn't even realize it kind of over that time. And then I guess when you initially were like, okay, you got into the education pathway that you needed to get into, and then you kind of went from there and then kind of got into the internship application process, right?
Right.
Okay. And so what do you think when you were going through that internship process or the application process, like what were you most scared of, I suppose, in all of that?
So, I had made this, rash decision to completely change my career, kind of within a 10-day span. I actually had no idea what I was getting into. So I had no idea that there was this long internship process afterwards. I had no idea that it was going to take me, 2 years just to get another bachelor's. I would recommend anybody who's changing careers, like really like look into it before you do what I did. Right. I still don't regret it at all. I think it was, the best decision ever. But really I would, and it's not easy to find this information. It's not readily available. And I did a lot of research before I changed my, within 10 days. But I think that the scariest process was realizing that I have to apply for this internship, which is essentially a residency.
Right.
We call it an internship, but it's really a residency. Even the process in which we apply for it is the same in which physicians apply for their residency. And I think that was really scary. And then, I didn't want to move from where I live now, and there's no program here specifically. So having to find my own preceptors was really scary as well. And there's not there's not a good network to find preceptors, unfortunately. And there's just not a lot of support. And that's just kind of a flaw within the system, that there's no one person who can fix it, unfortunately. So I think that's kind of the scariest thing.
It is. And we'll get into your experience with Get Match coaching in a second here, but just going back to preceptors, we are constantly trying to figure out like what is a bigger structure that needs to be in place for preceptors to be incentivized to go and, train the future of dietetics. I think one of the hardest parts is, preceptors don't get paid if they're just on their own, and maybe they don't work for a hospital or a community center or something like that. Then they're taking time out of their, busy schedules to train, which is great to pay it forward, but there's not a lot of incentive there to do that. And that's where you're getting students that are asking hundreds of dietitians and getting a lot of no's because of it, which is unfortunate. So I guess let's go into your preceptor searching aspect of everything. How did that go? How did you kind of approach that?
So, I like I said earlier, is I am pretty fortunate coming into this where I do have a long history of working in healthcare, especially in this area. So I've been in healthcare in this area since 2009. I've worked within like the major hospital system that's locally here. And then I have, my husband works within the hospital system here as well. And then I worked with, just a ton of people. So at the end of the day, it was networking. Right. So having the ability to call somebody and be like, hey, do you know anybody who's a dietitian? Have somebody log into a network and be like, can you look at the employee directory for me, please? And find the dietitian.
Oh, I love that.
Is really, that's really what happened. I had people look up and find the dietitians in the employee directory, and when that didn't work, I had my husband like, can you just email anybody and ask them who this person is? Because you're not, as an RD to be, in most cases, you're not going to log onto a hospital website and find a list of the RDs that work there and find their email addresses. We're not listed as RDs. We're not listed as healthcare providers. The only people you're going to find are the doctors. And that makes it really, really tough.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, though, to be creative like that. I do think the number one thing with preceptor searching is creativity and kind of getting creepy. I know we tell a lot of our clients too, like to go on LinkedIn and try to, connect with as many dietitians as you can, try to get email, message them, whatever you can do, Google everything to try to find their contact information. I like that approach.
Yeah. So be creepy about it. If you can get in, like for the hospital, for example, if you can get in with anybody who's any director level in any department, anywhere in the hospital, it doesn't matter if they're radiology, it doesn't matter if they're, registration, anybody on that director level, they are going to know somebody else who is going to know somebody else who's going to know the director of nutrition services.
Love that.
Okay. Everybody knows somebody. And all you have to do is, if you don't know them, ask for somebody else. And when you find that dietitian, it's like, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't take an intern. Okay. Do you happen to know somebody who might? And that's really what it is. And it's about spreading this net out, because you're going to get more no's than you're going to get yeses. And I've come from a 17-year background in healthcare. Like, I can be a very valuable volunteer or shadowing person because I can do more things because I have clearance to do them, right? But I still got more no's than I got yeses, right? And it's just, you have to keep asking, you have to be annoying, you have to follow up, and you have to show your value.
That's probably one of the biggest things, especially when we're taking coaching clients through that. Like, how are you actually emailing this potential person? Are you just sending a hi name? I'm looking for preceptors. Do you take interns? Thank you, Jenny. Right? Like, no, this is your one chance to pitch yourself and to show your value and to say, here's my resume. I have all this X amount of years in healthcare. I have these things that I've already done. I know I want to, have this experience at your hospital because whatever it is. And that is your first impression. And that's what's going to get their attention and hopefully increase your response rate, but still knowing there's going to be a lot of no's there.
And that feels terrible. Like, just to put it out there, everybody who says, I don't like it, it's uncomfortable, it feels awful for everybody.
Yeah, no one's immune to it.
I don't like doing it. I don't like talking about myself. I'm one of those people who I'm like, you should just know who I am. It's fine. Right. Just trust me. I will be a good shadower person. I'm really good at helping out. It's hard. It's super hard to do that. It's very uncomfortable. But, at the end of the day, they don't know who you are. They've never seen your face before. They've never seen your name before. And if you don't sell yourself, nobody else will. And that doesn't necessarily make it more comfortable, but it's just what you got to do.
Oh, that is the mindset shift. I also have a little, I don't even know what the word is, motto, but it's like SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. And that's my little motto that just helps with, being able to be comfortable with rejection and know that not only are obviously you're coming to someone to get value from them, but knowing that you can make an impact on that organization too. I mean, interns can do a lot. They can take workload off of that clinical dietitian, maybe after the initial period when they get trained. It's a great connection to have. Maybe there's someone or something that you can do to help that dietitian in their career. You never know, because it's networking and you might have something to give as well, or know someone. And there's just this, there can be such a positive behind it. So if you go into the mindset with that, or go into it with that, then you're in a much better spot.
And just to put, maybe a little bit of perspective. So for everybody who's like, I don't have any healthcare experience, I don't know how to approach this, what value do I bring? I just want to see what they do on a day-to-day basis. So think about this just for a second. Let's say your dietitian sees 8 patients a day. And let's say you really have no healthcare skills. Let's pretend you have no skills whatsoever. But what you can do is you can walk the patient from the lobby to the office and check their full name and date of birth, which is something your dietitian does all the time. And that takes 5 minutes. But you do that for 8 patients a day, every single day. That gives that dietitian, 40 minutes back in the day where she can go to the bathroom, where she can check, where she can call reminder calls, where she can bill her patients not during her lunch hour, where she can fill up her glass of water and get something to drink, where she can wolf down lunch. That's a lot of time that you're giving back by doing something that really requires no skill, a smile on your face, and knowing how to check someone's full name and date of birth.
Wow. I love that, because you could be saying that in the pitch email and probably no one else is saying it or putting it in those terms. You have to imagine this is like marketing, right? And your target audience is a busy dietitian who's overworked and, stressed. And so coming to her in this idea that you're just going to add more work to her plate is not going to go well. So you have to exactly. Talk in a way that it's reducing their workload and give those tangible examples. I think that's awesome. And that could apply really to like a WIC dietitian or a outpatient. You could think about that in different scenarios for different types of dietitians.
And just to kind of build on that, for things that you can do that doesn't require a whole lot of skills. You guys remember Lisa Frank and the stickers?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are not a paperless system. Nobody is paperless. Everybody has papers. And every single paper that comes from the hospital has to have a sticker on it that has the patient's identification on it. And you know who has to put that sticker on it? Usually the dietitian. It requires no skills. Putting a sticker on a piece of paper.
Right.
What you do as a volunteer, put a sticker on a piece of paper.
Right. And that
gives that time back to your dietitian, which allows her to bill. And maybe it's 2 minutes, but 2 minutes for every single it all adds up. You can build, dietitians love handouts. If you guys don't know, been under a rock, we love our handouts. Bring a notepad and a pen and paper and write down what she puts in every single packet. Like if she does diabetes education, and every single type 2 diabetic gets these 3 documents, these 6 documents, these meal plans. You can go in and you can make those packets for her, and maybe she has to double check them, but she doesn't have to spend that time doing that. And those are like really low, kind of barriers of entries that you can do for these dietitians that don't require any skills as a dietitian. Allows you to get, help her. So you bring value to her table. It allows you to get experience, and allows you to learn how to talk to patients.
Right.
Right. Because you got 5 minutes to talk from the lobby. Like, what are you going to talk about?
This episode is sponsored by All Access Dietetics Get Matched coaching program. This program allows you to get the support, accountability, and expert strategy to help guide you through every step of the application process. Now here's Megan Huff with her experience as a Get Matched coaching client.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I used Get Matched coaching. I chose to invest in this because I felt lost in the application process and that I didn't really have adequate support from the Career Center and my advisor, because dietetics is a really niche career path. And I just thought that All Access Dietetics would be able to give me more guided support and strategies to make my application stand out. I wanted to feel confident in this process too, and be able to find ways to make myself a strong applicant. And my favorite part was that my coach helped me feel confident in my application, provided me with those strategies to have a standout application. And she gave really great edits too, and was able to answer every question I had because I had so many questions. And yeah, I'm happy to say that I matched to my top choice. So thank you, All Access Dietetics.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And those are things that if you weren't there, the dietitian would be doing. So in the future, when you're a dietitian, you don't maybe have that intern, you're doing those things anyways. Now you're a little bit more prepared, more comfortable in that, knowing that this is just a small portion of your time, in training, but it's it's the way to get your foot in the door and to have that win-win relationship with the dietitian.
And I will tell you, as somebody who's been a preceptor in a previous life, it doesn't really matter to me what you do, but if you choose to take initiative and try to help, don't overstep, don't go do something that's outside your scope of practice, but these little things where you're like, hey, can I go get this patient for you? And taking that initiative instead of me having to ask is huge. Mm-hmm. Showing up with a notebook and a pen and taking notes and figuring out what you want to do, figuring out how you can help. These are all things that bring value that dietitian may not have thought of, and is going to allow you to get a good reference from her. It's going to allow you to have a source for networking, and maybe she can't take you for so many hours, but she can recommend you to someone and be like, hey, they're really good at doing this, that, and the other. I think they'll be great. Maybe there's an opportunity down the road with them. And it's all about, it's kind of playing a game, maybe and don't feel like you're too good to put stickers on a piece of paper, because no one's too good to put stickers on a piece of paper.
Nope. That's funny. I think that's really key, is just having that go-giver personality, and as opposed to a go-getter, or having both, right? Because there's a really good book that it was based on sales. I feel like I've learned a lot about how to help students create and cultivate certain skills through sales and marketing. No joke, because that's really what it is. And being able to understand, it's a game, but also a skill set. There's a really good book. I'll just drop that now. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And I read that when I was a student going into my internship. And that's where I learned the SWSW thing. And, even being okay with rejection, and how to create that win-win situation for people, and how to show give feedback or show appreciation. All those things are little skills that they're in books, they're in the Success Principles. You can learn them and go into this with strategy and intention, rather than just kind of being there for the ride, which I think, is kind of a waste of your investment into the program and the money that you're putting into it. You want to get the most out of it, and that's how you can do it.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that, this pathway to become an RD, you have to be a marketing expert. And that's a lot to ask for somebody who's in college. That's a lot of, it's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask anybody, right? In nuclear medicine, we had to do the very same thing, where I had to do a 1,200-hour internship and get checked off. But I didn't have to, we had to sit in front of a room with 21 people and interview. But we didn't have to market and essentially solicit myself to RDs to get a position. They either chose you or they didn't, and then they guaranteed you a spot for your internship. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's just a much different scenario, where we're required to be not only a good student, but a good marketer.
Yes.
And a good
storyteller too, right? Because you always want to tell your experiences and story, and that's more impactful than just listing off things on your resume. Like those are all things which kind of segues into this whole experience you had with applying to internships, because it's not just about soliciting to preceptors, but also to selection committees and directors of programs. So do you want to share, I know you were in the Get Matched coaching program, so maybe tell me about the journey from, when you decided to do the coaching program and how that all went for you overall.
So I want to say, as soon as I realized I had to apply for DICAs, that I decided that I was going to do the Get Matched coaching program. Like I was like, I'm not doing this by myself. It was once I realized, my husband's a physician, so he had to do something very similar, and he was like, "Yeah, why don't you just do the coaching program?" I was like, "Yeah," because it's too much. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, to be going to school. It's a very competitive program. You have to, do all your science courses and blah, 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 blah. And I was doing, some master classes at the same time. And then you have to get all these hours, and then you have to go and you have to get these references. And like, none of my references counted because nuclear medicine has nothing to do with nutrition, and you have to do all these. It's not good enough just to go to school, because you have to have experience in the field, which also isn't fair. And then you have to have a good resume, and then you have to be a good storyteller, because you have to write this personal statement. So you have to get experience to put into this personal statement. And it's just so much. And then if you're volunteering for an RD, a lot of them are having you do projects, which is fine. But it all takes time. And then to figure out and to learn how to put it all together into this beautifully deliverable package to DICAs and to your internship programs that you're applying for, it's really complex. And to the language that you have to use in order to grab attention, especially coming from nuclear medicine, which is much different dialect than nutrition, it was almost a no-brainer to me. And I never would have, I can't imagine not doing it. Just the amount of stress that it took off my shoulders, being able to be like, "Hey, Susan, I have a question about, or like random stuff that I was like, I don't know what this is." And Susan's like, "Oh, I got you." And like, she would get these crazy emails from me. I'm sure she was like, "Why did you give me her?"
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Who is this?
Trust me. I mean, just to give a really quick background on that program, like so I started coaching students probably 2 years in from when we started the company in 2008, kind of launched in late 2008 into 2009. And about a year in, I started getting emails like, "Can you look at my personal statement? Can you look at my resume?" All this stuff. And I was learning, I had just gone through it myself. I did a lot of my own research, but was like, okay, there's definitely strategies here. This is a competition. So, how am I going to be better than the other applicants that are fighting for the same spot? Which it's hard to think about it like that, but it's true for a lot of these programs where there's limited spots and way more applicants. So, but I realized through this journey, and now it's been over 10 years of doing it and getting to what is now like the Get Matched coaching program, there is strategy in every single step of the process. There are little details and things that you can do in every single aspect, from program, the programs you apply to, how you reach out to preceptors, how you handle references, especially in really unique cases like yours, and how to tell that unique story that no one else is going to tell. And our coaches, we've read like thousands of personal statements at this point, and we've had all those questions be asked to us because we've had people go from start to finish in all these different varieties of backgrounds that, when you're emailing Susan, she's heard that question or like a variation of that question before. So she's ready and is like an expert in all of that, just like all of our coaches. And it saves you so much time. So not only like the stress is relieved from you having someone to like ask that to, but you don't have to go look up those answers on your own. And you don't have to like spend that energy. You just need to spend your energy on the right things, which your coach kind of guides you through what those are, versus like having to learn this whole process and learn everything, from scratch, where you can just ask it and get that right away and move on and go to the next question that comes up. Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely. Even just as simple as like having to organize your resume to stand out in DICAs. Because, at the end of the day, you're a piece of paper. in Dietetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that most of these people are seeing. Sometimes you do an interview, sometimes you don't, but you are basically a piece of paper. So how do you make that piece of paper stand out the most? And I mean, I just can't recommend the Get Match coaching. It was just, it took so much stress off me that I didn't even have to like know anything. I was just like, she was like, write your resume. I was like, okay, here's my resume. She was like, write your personal statement. I was like, okay, here's my personal statement. And she was like, do this. I was like, okay, here's this.
Right.
She was like, and you guys made those modules as well, which I'm sure are fabulous. And I'm sure somebody looked at them.
Oh, that's hilarious you say that, because it is definitely like less than half of coaching clients look at those modules. They really just want the one-on-one support, which is totally fine. But then it just depends on the type of person you are and, how much you want to do there. But yeah, there's like a course that comes along with the coaching program that are really like videos and trainings and templates and things. But yeah, you can also get all that value directly from your coach too. So,
and I think those are great for somebody who hasn't wrote a resume before, who hasn't done a personal statement or has trouble starting. I think those are like super valuable for those. But like, I've had like a long running CV and I've had, personal statements that I've written before. So I kind of had that background already. So it was more like, how do we spin this sort of thing? But those are really, valuable as well. So it's just a great program.
Thank you. Yes. I'm so glad you got a lot out of it. I know, especially with career changers, a couple of things like come up with the clients that we've worked with in the past. It's like when you said spin it, right? So you have all of these skills, you have this background in healthcare and everything, but it's like, this is for a dietetic internship program. So you have to change things and talk about things in a different way. And maybe, one of the big things with the resume and career changers is we visually want to see more nutrition on there or nutrition related things than your past career, or, be balanced in a way, as opposed to like having it just be a resume that for a job in nuclear medicine that you wanted. Right. So, that strategy. And then even some career changers think that their past career is like negative in some way or weakness, or they want to like downplay that. And the coach can take that unique situation and make sure that you're using it to your advantage. Like we're going to make sure we're pulling everything out of you, all the results, the impact, the things that you've done, and apply it to why that would make you a great dietitian. And that's really the magic in, working with a coach and having kind of like someone in the field that is a dietitian and that knows what directors are looking for to be able to help you bridge that gap, because it's there. And certainly you're ready to be an amazing registered dietitian. Like that's not the issue. It's just communicating that, marketing that.
Yeah. And like, one thing, for example, that I never would have thought to put on my resume, applying to DICAs, was like the community service stuff that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of community outreach stuff that is just something that I do. Right. It's just something that I'm passionate for. It's something I've done over the years and will continue to do over the years. And I don't think anything of it, but apparently that's very important in DICAs. And it's very important when applying for the RD program. So Susan's like, well, what about, she's like, have you ever done any of this stuff? I was like, oh yeah, and she's like, we need to talk about it. I was like, why? It's like, what do you mean? And she's like, we need to talk about this. And so, just something that like I've never really put on a CV or never really put on a resume, because it's just something that I do with my free time to give back to the community that I never really thought was important. But it's something that, and again, it's just that different perspective, and having somebody who is an expert at getting you into these internships and who knows what they're looking at, who's done thousands of these and knows what the verbiage is that people are looking for,
right.
Versus me, I never would have put, like my community service history on there, because like, whatever, I could just do it. I like it.
Gosh, yes. And we just pull things out of people because they just don't know that those things matter or that they can be worth selling. And the fact that, like to be a well-rounded person kind of in dietetics is a huge value. And so the variety that people can have and bring and show that is all great. Well, that's awesome. So I think I'm glad that you had a successful experience with it. And then you also on match day, I know you have a fun story that I think we check in with our clients and, find out, how are they doing okay on that week before match day in April. And tell us, Jenny, what were you doing on match day?
Match day, I was at the base of Mount Everest. So I was leaving for the base of Mount Everest on match day. So I was in Nepal. It was 4:15 in the morning in Nepal was when I had to log into Dietitics.
Oh
And
my
it's 2 hours after that was when I was going to catch my flight to start my trek to Mount Everest. So it was a very stressful morning because the day before all the internet went out, like there's no communication, there's no cell service, where we were. And I was like, I basically have, like 2 hours to get all these responses out. And of course, like I'm panicking and like, this is where Susan comes in. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What if I don't get in? I was like, if I don't get in, like what happens? Because I'm not going to have internet service. I don't even know if I'm going to have power or electricity or like a shower. And so it was just insane. So it was like 4:15 in the morning. I had to log in. It took me forever to get in because, Wi-Fi in third world countries not great.
Right.
But I was able to get in and I was able to, log in. I got that I matched and I was able to send my email. I sent an email over to Susan and, like we had this whole plan where like my husband was going to check it if he didn't hear from me by a certain time and like all those other things. And then like my mentor was like going to get involved here. She was like, well, if you don't get in, she's like, let me know and I'll start applying for you. It was like, it was just insane. Like it was the network of people who were going to help me out was just insane.
I love it. Yeah. Having that backup plan is so key. I mean, that's like a whole part of the program too, is like preparing for that. Like, even though we have it's like 99% match rate, a success rate, 100% last year, like in your class. And, just to know that that's still something that we care about because we're like, we are not letting anyone, mess this up. Like we want to support you and get you in no matter what. So I love it.
Susan was great because she was like, you're going to be fine. She's like, here's the backup plan, but like, maybe stop worrying.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like prepare for the worst, expect the best on that.
Like, you don't understand. I'm not in control. It's a problem.
We do a lot of mindset and like cheerleading and it's very emotional, but it's such a good thing because I think there is so much uncertainty. There's so much not in your control, and to have someone to be that person that can go through it with you is really valuable. So
I was hoping to do like a fun, like I matched here or whatever, like at the base of Mount Everest, but then I forgot.
Oh no.
I was like, busy. So
yes. Oh, I bet. Yeah. We've heard some good match stories, match day stories. That one is probably the most adventurous, but we've also had someone, because you get nervous before, so you want to distract yourself like throughout the day. And good one. Yeah, I personally like just hung out with my friends all day. I think we got a keg of beer, which that was just my college experience at Big Ten school. That was what we did. But,
I ran away to Nepal.
Yeah. So this person, I remember she jumped out of a plane that day. And she's like, I'll just be nervous for that instead of for the actual match days, which I thought was really funny. But all right. So moving on from there, a couple more questions. So what is next for you? I'm just curious kind of to hear, obviously you have your internship to do, but yeah, what do you think is next in the next few years as you get to become a dietitian?
So obviously internship, and then so I have my little nutrition coaching business now, which I'd like to launch into a full private practice. Near and dear to my heart is endurance athletics. So I'd love to get my CSSD. I kind of already have like my pathway planned out for that. So I want to go through the International Olympic Committee and do the sports nutrition program through them. Hopefully by the time I do that, they get all their master's credentials. Right now, they're kind of teetering with that. So that would be cool to get another master's degree specifically in sports nutrition, and do my CSSD and launch that full-time, specialize hopefully in endurance nutrition, and maybe like now that I'm in love with mountaineering, maybe like high mountain and extreme environment sort of sports nutrition. And of course, cardiovascular wellness, since that's just where I started off at.
Wow. Yeah. It really comes full circle. And then, that warms my heart, Jenny, because I just love to see all the different ways that people can take this career and make it their own and make it something that just lines up so well with their values, with their interests, their life. It's really powerful. So thank you for sharing all that. Let's wrap it up here then with kind of a cutesy thing we're doing for the podcast. We'll see how it goes. But the podcast is called Dear Future Dietitian, and it's really meant to be like the start of a letter of advice, and then the podcast is like the advice. So I'd love to hear kind of your advice to future dietitians. Take it away.
All right. So everybody go ahead and press pause on the podcast. Go get you a pen and paper because I'm going to give you exactly how to do this with a step-by-step guide.
Oh.
All right. So, dear future dietitian, the best piece of advice I can give you is to get involved with healthcare early. So what does that mean? That means if you're already on your path to become a dietitian, if you're a senior in high school, if you're already in classes, that may mean volunteering or shadowing with an RD. So how are you going to do that? You got to find an RD first, which, as you heard, can be really difficult. So you're going to look for outpatient centers. I found have been the easiest way to get in with a dietitian. Outpatient diabetes education centers tend to have registered dietitians. They can charge more for their services, so they tend to be there. Look for outpatient cardiac rehab centers. They tend to have registered dietitians, or they'll have a nurse in a nutrition education role. Look for renal dialysis centers. They will have outpatient. They will have an RD there. Look for assisted living facilities, and outpatient oncology departments as well tend to have RDs. If you can't get in with an RD there, stay with me on this one. I would recommend shadowing a physician who refers to an RD frequently. So that's going to mean endocrinologist, so that's your diabetes doctors. That's going to mean nephrologists, your kidney doctors, your oncologists, cancer doctors, and it's going to mean cardiologists, your heart doctors, okay? So why a physician? All right, so they're not going to be able to give you a review on DICAs. They're not going to be able to give you that hands-on RD experience, but what they can give you is contact information for the RDs that they refer to. They can give you an inside look on what it looks like to refer to an RD. So while you may not be able to get in with an RD, you can get an experience that you can spin on your personal statement on what it's like to work with a provider who refers to a dietitian, which will allow you as a dietitian to learn how to market yourself to that provider as well. So it gives you a skill set as well in the future on how to market with them. And it allows you to open up for networking. Again, remember how we talked about in the beginning where I was like, you literally need somebody to go into a directory and pull up an RD. So if you get in with those physicians, you're also going to start talking to their MAs and their nurses. Your physician's probably not going to look into the directory unless you get really close with them, and then they very well may. But getting in with their MAs or their nurses, they can also give you access to who they refer to as well. So your first bet is going to be your RDs. Shoot for your outpatient facilities first. And then your physicians, look for your physicians that are going to be your referral basis for your RDs. Again, try endocrinology first. They refer a lot. Then your nephrology, and then your kidney doctors and your oncologist. Okay. And then last but not least, if you can't get in with any of those, just volunteer anywhere in the hospital. It doesn't matter where you volunteer. You can volunteer at the front desk and check people in. You can, volunteer in anywhere. It really doesn't matter. It's getting your foot in the door. It's getting your foot into that hospital. Any sort of hands-on contact within healthcare will give you something to talk about in your personal statement. It will expose you to what it's actually like working in a hospital. Talking to somebody and having them tell you what their job is like is a whole lot different than seeing what it actually is. Again, it will give you access to networking. It will allow you to, potentially walk into the diabetes education department and just introduce yourself, which may be literally putting your foot in that doorway. Okay, and that may be what it takes. So any sort of experience, it's going to look good on a resume. It's going to give you something to talk about in your personal experience. If you're younger or if you have time, this is something that I was able to do. And I was very fortunate I was able to do. If you can get any sort of certification or degree beforehand. So like I know STEM programs in high school are real popular now. So if you can get into a health profession STEM program, whether that's an LPN program, an EMT program, any sort of background in healthcare, again, networking. It's going to open doors for you to get into places and allow you to do more when you're there. And it's going to give you a leg up on your classmates, because if you have that background education in healthcare, all of your classes are going to be that much easier because you're going to know a little bit going in. Mm-hmm. And that's really, so dear future dietitian, get involved with healthcare early. If you can do it on a volunteer basis, great. If you can do it from as an education basis and get some sort of degree or certification that will allow you to put that on your resume, put it in your personal statement, and have a leg up on your classmates, that's really the best piece of advice that I can give you guys.
I love that. I'm very grateful that you gave the step-by-steps, you gave the specifics, really a blueprint, because it can help students really take action from that, which means it's great advice when they can actually do something with it. I think people as dietitians, we're in that bubble and we forget that we're a part of a bigger healthcare system, and that all of those skills, and I loved your point about being able to know how doctors, like why they want to refer to dietitians and know that relationship and what they're thinking, so that in the future you understand that. I think it's so important. Interprofessional relationships with different healthcare professionals is a huge skill. So thank you very, very much for that advice and for just sharing your story, Jenny. I feel like it's unique for sure, but I think still very relatable. I know you might not think you're relatable with given the the nuclear medicine background, but I think you really are, and kind of go through a similar journey that career changers are going through. And by listening to this, hopefully they feel a lot more confident in taking those steps forward, knowing that, wow, you're going to have a career that you love and that really aligns with your values and helps a lot of people and makes that impact that you were looking for initially. So thank you so much, Jenny, for being here and sharing your story. For those of you that are interested in the Get Matched coaching program, please do go to our website, allaccessdietetics.com, to learn more about that. And for free resources with the application itself, you can go to our free resources page and download the application toolkit, which will give you samples from that course that we were talking about to help give you some strategy to stand out in the application. Don't forget to reach out to us on Instagram or DM us with any questions, or to connect with Jenny. Her information will also be in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dear Future Dietitian. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I also hope that you take action based on what you learned today. Now, if you have any questions at all, please reach out to us through our website, allaccessdietetics.com, or DM us on Instagram or TikTok. We are here to help you become a more confident registered dietitian to be, and make this journey way less stressful for you. So reach out, don't be a stranger, and we hope to hear from you soon. Have a great day.